Around the NFL podcast has been waiting all day for Sunday night.
From the Chris Wessling podcast studio, it's Around the NFL. I am Dan Hanzus, and I have heroes. Gregg Rosenthal, Marc Sessler. It is, yes, hard to believe, the 10th season for the Around the NFL podcast covering our league. And it all starts right here in a lot of ways with the Week 1 flagship show. Mark, pinch yourself, baby.
I have been pinching myself all day.
Which was weird, I thought.
Well,
just all these sounds of like, ooh, oh, Mark. I like him from the corner. It was a lot.
I enjoy it the way I want to.
I was studying Mark very closely today, Greg. As you know, this is the first Sunday of football where Mark's not a Browns fan, or so we're being told.
Supposedly.
So we're going to get into that. We're going to get into the drama of Week 1, a lot of great finishes, a nice start to the 2022 regular season. But before we get to that, let's get to what I thought was maybe the big statement of Week 1. Let us head to the desert.
Hardman and Edwards-Helaire in the backfield at the same time. They shovel it inside. Edwards-Helaire! Touchdown! Kansas City! 2 drives, 2 touchdowns. A play they love to run to Kelsey. They go to Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and the Chiefs are on fire in this first quarter of the season.
Well said by Mitch Holtis. All our friends are coming back.
They're back in the house.
Mitch Holtis is back with us, WDAF. No Tyreek Hill? No problem for Patrick Mahomes, who threw for 360 and 5 touchdowns in the Chiefs' 44-21 win over the Cardinals in Arizona. Mark, we all felt confident in Andy Reid's ability to move forward without Hill. One of the best playmakers ever, by the way. But it was surprising how immediate and insanely successful they were right out of the chute.
I mean, you can look at this game, I think, in 2 ways. One, the Chiefs are, I think, way better than we would have even expected. And their new offense looks dashing. Or the Cardinals are a hot, gigantic, roaming, dissolving mess. I am giving the credit here to the Chiefs because...
Was that the first roaming, dissolving mess of the season? Let me mark it down?
Yeah.
All right, go
Check
on.
the box. I just thought Patrick Mahomes, I mean, and it's almost a tiresome exercise to try to describe Patrick Mahomes when he is playing this way. But the offense, which had gone through a transition, it was this whole business, like, can they possibly mask the loss of Tyreek Hill? They look better to me. And I know they're playing a terrible defense that's been compromised at cornerback, but he played a nearly perfect first half. I mean, they could have put up way more points than they did. A few little things hadn't happened to them. They lost Harrison Butker, their kicker, for part of the game. He looked like he was severely injured, and then he came back too. So they dodged that bullet. But I think if you watch this offense, they're using a lot of 3 tight end sets. Their running game, to me, looks much more vibrant. I think that's been maybe one thing in the last couple of seasons where their run game, they didn't really have a classic lead guy, and it sometimes didn't seem to come together. I did today. I think Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked as good as I've seen him look. The wide receiver situation, they're fine. They're fine. I just think this is Andy Reid. 1 game in, you have to say they completely succeeded so
Greg,
far.
I'll tee you up like this because we went into the Sunday saying, you know, Mahomes and Rodgers, 2 of the greats, are entering this season with new supporting cast, with big changes, with a Hall of Fame receiver leaving the building. And Mahomes, and he's your MVP pick, so I know you're feeling good about this, did not miss a beat, and that's a credit, of course, to him, but also Andy Reid.
Yeah, you were saying, Andy Reid doesn't get the credit, and that he's the one cooking up all those
He's a mad
new
scientist,
plays.
not just a nice grandfather.
Right, he's the one who's doing the Belichick, what we think Bill Belichick should be doing in the offseason. Not that he's not doing it too, but he's not doing it on offense.
I don't know what he's doing.
Like this. And it's not just, okay, we're going to come up with these crazy passing plays. It's the running plays where I think they get the most creative, and they're using the athleticism of their offensive linemen, like the big run game type of dorks. And I'm saying this fondly. A guy, I think of Chris Brown on Twitter who does Smart Football, is noticing how they're doing these power shovel plays at the goal line with their fullbacks, which is taking it all the way back to Newt Rockne, Clark Shaughnessy, old style football, but before you even knew what the passing game was. And if you can mix a little bit of that and the passing game and the brilliance of Patrick Mahomes, feeling like, okay, you guys are sleeping on me a little bit, this is what you get. 33 first downs in 66 plays. I know this is the first game, but we will not have a better stat in this entire show than that. That is outrageous. I've never heard such a thing.
Yeah, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire is a guy that I know fantasy owners have been frustrated because as a former first-round pick, he was supposed to be an unstoppable chess piece when they brought him into the team 2 years ago, and he kind of faded out of the game plan by the end of last season. But the way he was being deployed here, yes, Juju Smith-Schuster hits the ground running, productive. Travis Kelce as dominant as ever. So, yes, the Chiefs are humming. The Chiefs are going to be okay. And a reminder that they should be seen as the favorite in the AFC West. On the other side of the ball here, Sessy, you know, there's some lipstick on the pig here with Kyler Murray's numbers, but it was ugly. It was ugly all the way around. The offense, all right, maybe they got put in a bad spot, but the defense wasn't even competitive.
Well, the defense looks awful. I mean, they go watch how wide open Chiefs targets are. I mean, there's multiple plays where there's no one around them, and they're already bad at cornerback. They lost a cornerback early on in the game, Byron Murphy. I don't even know if he came back, but it didn't matter.
Trayvon Mullen didn't play at all. Who they had traded for.
And on offense, it's like first of all, I don't want to overreact to this 1 week, but I think they have some real issues. You don't have DeAndre Hopkins. We get that. You lost Rondale Moore days ago. They don't really have. They just look discombobulated to me. And with Kyler Murray, I mean, when he's good, he's good. But I thought he missed a bunch of wide-open guys today. And something that's going on with Kyler Murray is I think he just sometimes maybe doesn't see the field. He was also under duress a bunch. I mean, it was just a messy outing. And after this whole journey where we've re-signed the coach, we've re-signed the GM, we've extended the quarterback, thinking this is the vision, this is the offense that you want to say, you know, it's the NFC version where Andy Reid can go cook it up, but so can Cliff Kingsbury. That was the whole concept here, and they just, to me, looked like they picked up where they left off, which was not a good place.
Wait, what did you say in the newsroom? They should just surprise everyone and give another extension to
Kingsbury. Yeah, that's a good way to change the narrative.
Yes.
Just keep on handing out extensions because you're in deep now. The Bidwills and the entire Cardinals organization, they were so convinced of being right about this QB, this coach, and this GM that they were handing out money like it was nothing.
It's week one.
It was, but it's also all the concerns that we had about the Cardinals, how last year ended.
Also, you know how no defenses throughout Patrick Mahomes' career has blitzed them at all because it's like poison. Today, they decided to try to flip the script in Arizona. They were the first team in Patrick Mahomes' career to blitz him more than half of the snaps. That did not work out well.
It did not fare well for them.
How many of all three of us, how many it's week ones are we going to hear today?
Okay.
But it's fair. It's fair. Everything needs to be kept in that mindset because the preseason's, you know, what it is now. It's going to take time for these teams, but the Cardinals clearly were not ready. Shout out to Justin Reed, by the way, who replaced Harrison Butker as place kicker for the Chiefs in the first half and went 1 of 2 on PATs and blasted a kickoff out of the end zone.
Yeah, no, I think
that's remarkable.
It's not the first person you'd think of a safety as your backup kicker, but that first PAT, he nailed it.
He could be a kickoff specialist. Yeah. The Colts could have used him today.
That was the greatest show of athleticism I've seen so far this season. All right, so Chiefs rolling, Cards hurting. Let's check in.
I also locked this up, by the way. When you lock it up, you don't even want to sweat it. You just want to see it.
That's a nice one.
You want to see it.
We all did very nice for the most part.
Not everyone.
So the Chiefs are already set up for a huge TNF matchup with an AFC West rival this week, and that rival was playing the Raiders. Let's get into that game.
Shotgun snap, looking right. Carr climbs the pocket, hit, grab, and he has dropped. The ball is out, and the Chargers have it. The Chargers have it. Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack. It was a Khalil Mack strip sack.
You heard it there. Matt Money Smith, Daniel Jeremiah, KYSR. Khalil Mack's sack fumble of Derek Carr on 4th down near midfield was the difference for the Chargers, who jumped out to a fast start, then held on to defeat the Raiders 24-19 at SoFi Stadium. Listen, did I think that the Chargers were going to charger that thing up at the end? Yeah, I had some serious doubts about Los Angeles' ability to close that game out. And yet, Derek Carr just wasn't going to let it happen because this is one of those games with Carr where you start to think, Jeez, all the criticisms that he gets, and there'll be pushback from Raider fans or people in the family or whatever it is. But he put the ball on the ground. He threw 3 interceptions. And I think if they get better quarterback play in this game, they do steal it from the Chargers, who were vulnerable by the end of this game.
Wow. I mean, it's not really his thing to make mistakes like that. What were they about? Were they mental errors? Were the pass rushes getting to him? Because Khalil Mack had a day, and maybe he just started getting a little frantic.
It was. I think maybe he seemed a little scattered in this game, and it wasn't, it wasn't terrible. He did, for instance, connect with Davante Adams repeatedly. Adams had 10 catches for 41 yards and a touchdown on 17 targets. So, I think this is, again, the week 1 side of this. It's going to take some time to calibrate this thing and find ways to keep Darren Waller involved, to have Hunter Renfrow involved. Remember how important Renfrow was.
3 for 21 today. Waller had a good game, 4 for 79 after a new contract over the weekend, by the way.
But I think with Carr, you kind of saw that perhaps maybe he's trying to figure out how he wants to do this. But, yeah, I think he got mixed up a little bit this game. I think he got put in a blender, and he made mistakes that cost him this game.
I mean, the 2 fumbles that he had also, they were lucky and fortunate not to lose them. But one of them, when we were watching this together, it was the classic just holding the ball too long and allowing the pressure to find him. I mean, he was running around back there. I think this one note beyond the fact that the Chargers, we were wondering, almost gave this game away. The defensive parts, like Khalil Mack, looked great today. And that's big. I didn't really know what we were going to get from Khalil Mack necessarily. Over the course of the season, we'll see.
3 sacks, 4 QB hits.
Right. He fits in this defense. Brandon Staley went and got him because he knows who he is. And right away, he was the difference in this game.
And Keenan Allen went out of this game with a hamstring early. And that was, we'll keep an eye on that because Allen is such an important part of what the Chargers do. But you had a guy like DeAndre Carter who stepped in, and he scores a touchdown. He has another big conversion. He goes 3 for 64. Gerald Everett carries in a Raiders defender backing into the end zone for another touchdown.
That was a crazy play.
Yeah, and I think Herbert played a Herbert game. He starts out his season very well, mistake-free football, and in front of a lot of Raiders fans. The game was played across the street from us. The Chargers, and we've talked about this with the Rams too, you could tell they figured out how we play in our own building now. It's different than most stadiums. It's different than most teams have to deal with, but they took care of business. This is a nice way for the Chargers to start the season because we've seen it too often where they find a game like this and it goes away, goes the wrong way, and then when they miss the playoffs by a game, you're like, oh, what about that week 1 tank job we had?
They've got the Chiefs next week. You could not let this one slip away and go deal with Kansas City at 0-1.
Right, and you think about the difference in that Kansas City game, for instance, they're probably going to be without Keenan Allen, and so now you can afford maybe to do that because Herbert's at the point where he's making guys better, but I'm a little worried about a situation. No one had more than 4 targets on this team where it's like DeAndre Carter, Trey McKitty had 3 catches. Xander Horvath had a touchdown. I mean, I feel like I'm just making up names here. Whereas Josh Palmer and Mike Williams, the guys you expected, didn't do much of anything. On the flip side of Mack was the Raiders' big acquisition, Chandler Jones, who from at least what I read, I got to watch this closely, Rashawn Slater shut down pretty well throughout the game. They're great.
Their pass rush barely showed up in this. I like this Trey McKitty. I think I don't know if that's a real name, but I like that.
That's like a Sessler name. Xander Horvath also felt like a Sessler name.
There is a tendency for, to get on the quarterback too much and then not bring up the offensive line, and I think that was a issue in this game as well. He was sacked 6 times, Carr, and Vegas was shifting around their unit. They used 3 different combinations in their offensive line trying to find that stability. So, yeah, I think they're a work in progress. They have the Cardinals next week, so that's a team, depending how you look at it, you're either getting the Cardinals at a good time or the worst time, but that becomes an important game for the Raiders because the Chiefs are going to be off and running this season.
One quick question, Josh McDaniels, did you notice Josh McDaniels-esque elements to the offense? Was it just a lot of focus on Davante Adams? Because the ground game did not, numbers-wise.
I can't give you a real take on the Josh McDaniels-esque flair to the offense. All I could tell you is that it didn't do much. They didn't do enough.
How about the sideline shots? Did he seem as agitated and or fired up as he was at points of his Broncos career?
You know what? I'm going to have to go back and watch the Josh McDaniels sideline shots as well.
Yeah, we didn't.
We're putting a lot of heat on you.
Yeah, we didn't help you out there with those last two questions.
All right, let's now. So those are two games that are interesting. So you have the Chiefs making a huge statement, the Cardinals laying an egg, the Chargers refusing to charger, and the Raiders, after a lot of hype, stumbling out of the gates. But now let's get to something fun. Let's get to a crazy ending. Sorry, Gravedigger. Let's go to Nashville.
Jones takes the snap, rolls right, shovel pass for Barkley. Barkley in for the 2-point conversion. A little shovel pass to Saquon, and then he did the rest, taking on defenders, and the Giants have the lead 21-20 with 1:06 to go.
That's playing to win there, Bob.
Yes, it is. Bob Papa and Carl Banks with the call, WFAN. Hey, you know what? Hey, this is Carl in Rego Park.
Oh, no.
I'll tell you what. The difference between Dable and Joe Judge. One guy plays to win, one guy doesn't play at all. I'll hang up and listen.
He's also not wrong, that caller.
Daniel Jones had a 1-yard touchdown pass to Chris Miark, and it was followed by that gutsy 2-point conversion by, I don't care if it's Miark.
It's Myrick.
Myrick. It's Miark to me.
I understand you're taking editorial, freebies with that, but
Yeah.
I don't approve.
Gutsy 2-point conversion by Saquon Barkley there, and then setting up Big Bone Randy to push a 47-yarder, pull a 47-yarder, which, Greggy, I predicted in the newsroom live, even pointed to the exact spot on the screen.
It was amazing.
Where Bullock's ball was going to go.
Dan literally traced the arc of where the ball was going to go in front of a stunned newsroom, and then the ball went exactly where that arc was. It was
I don't
impressive.
know how that happened either, but
You're a seer.
after the Jets played today, I could use a W, and I got one. Anyway, it all added up to a stunning 21-20 Giants win over the Titans. Let's bring in a devastated Gravedigger who, this is his maiden flagship program as our main producer. And, we asked him to be our voice on this one, to follow this game, to cover it, and then help us dissect it. And this is a tough way to get thrown into the fire. How you doing, buddy?
It's all good. It's just football. It's not like my life or anything. No.
I mean, you seemed like a sad puppy dog about half an hour ago. You
Little
recovered. You're
downbeat.
better now.
It's definitely a disappointing way to open the season, obviously, but week ones are like this all around the league right now. Packers losing, Rams losing. You can never predict how week one's going to go.
Take us through it a little bit, Gravedigger,
Yeah.
because this is a game that Tennessee was in control of. Where did things start to kind of spin out for him?
Yeah, the Titans looked like the dominant team in the first half, winning in all phases, explosive punt return, forcing 3-and-outs. They were getting after Daniel Jones, had 4 or 5 sacks in the first half, I think. And then in the second half, they gave up big plays. It was like the Giants weren't moving the ball effectively on Tennessee, but they had a huge shot to Sterling Shepard for a touchdown, an explosive Saquon Barkley 68-yard run, another 33-yard run. And with 9 minutes left, the Giants were poised to tie the game 20-13, and Daniel Jones made a horrible decision, really the only bad decision he made all day, looking in the end zone and just stared down a receiver. Amani Hooker was all over it from the beginning and broke on it and intercepted it in the end zone. It was like, all right, Titans can close this out now with the ball, 9 minutes to go at their own 20-yard line. Titans go 3-and-out quickly, punt it away. The Giants get a huge run from Saquon Barkley, a 33-yard run, and then
He
looked great today.
The Saquon
Barkley
Barkley
did look
development,
great.
and I understand that Saquon is on a New York Giant team that even today's result notwithstanding is a work in progress and a team that's rebuilding. But that makes them interesting in the NFC East. If he is going to have 194 total yards, 194 total yards, he had the 2-point conversion, the longest run from scrimmage for the Giants since Daniel Jones's 80-yard stumble run on primetime a couple of years ago. That was huge. That helped turn this game as well.
Yeah, Saquon Barkley was borderline unstoppable. I mean, even when it felt like the Titans were bottling him up, he was muscling forward for extra yards. And the difference in the game, I think, was the explosive plays. I mean, the Giants had big explosive plays that set them up for scores. The Titans had a couple big explosives in the passing game, but not enough to sustain success on offense and keep the Giants offense off the field at the end of the game when they had to close it out. And I thought Tannehill looked pretty good. He had a couple misses in there, but overall, pretty good game for Tannehill. Derrick Henry, I will say, looks a step slower than he does when he's at his peak, and that could just be early season Derrick Henry. He usually takes a few weeks to really get going, or it could be a 28-year-old running back coming off a major foot injury that doesn't have the same juice he used to have. But I do think if you're a Giants fan, you have to be encouraged by the way they stuck with it, because at halftime, it felt like this was going to end in a blowout for Tennessee, and the Giants came out in the second half and made all the plays.
Brian Dable, teams don't give up.
But you know what? I get that that's a joke, but I do think that this was a big day for Brian Dable, because a couple things. I think we showed it during our highlight package too. He got in the face of Daniel Jones after that one mistake and was just jawing him out. I like that. I think it's like so this is your 1 year to figure out what you are, Daniel Jones, or you're out of here. And the coaching decision at the end to point instead of tying it up. How many, compare that to what Lovie Smith did in Houston today, which we'll get to later.
I mean, compared to the last head coach who did
to the years of bland play calling and everything else.
A third down kneel in their own goal line.
Well, compared to virtually any coach in the league, because they're down a point there. The analytics would actually say, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm guessing, would be much more down on going for the 2 there, because there's still a minute left that you give the other team a chance to go win. That's more traditionally a place you just take the points. Because there's a minute left, the other team can get set up to win, which the Titans did, by the way. So you're taking all that risk without the payoff. But I love that it's trusting your best player, Saquon Barkley, and I'm so glad I got to see that highlight as we're talking. If you're watching us on YouTube, it's also going up there for all our audio listeners. His lateral quickness on that play is what got it done. I mean, the Titans linebacker is in position to make that play.
Two linebackers, or a defensive lineman and a linebacker.
And he can just scoot, and you could see that in the little bit of practice footage and the preseason that we saw of Barkley, that wow, that lateral explosion is absolutely back. Another preseason star, Kyle Phillips, who we kept talking up, was the leading receiver at the time.
How is Treylon Burks, by the way? Because his numbers looked like he maybe stopped finally, indulging in edibles before practicing games.
Treylon Burks looked pretty good. I mean, he had a few big catches. He was targeted on another one that didn't come down with, but he looked pretty good. Kyle Phillips was pretty good, but Kyle Phillips had a almost killer muffed punt, which is what set up the Amani Hooker interception.
I get it, but he ran a perfect route and made a perfect catch to set up the game-winning play. And that was a timing type of throw that you have to trust he's going to be exactly where it was. And that gets me to one thing that drives me crazy in the NFL, how badly botched that end-of-game sequence was by Vrabel.
The head coach of the year did not play that very well. They used a timeout to prevent a delay of game. Ryan Tannehill had the snap off, but they had already called the timeout to prevent the delay of game.
You shouldn't call it. I would have rather taken 5 yards at that point than I would waste the timeout.
So you lose your timeout.
You had 2 or 3 plays left there. Instead, they back up 3 or 4 yards to make Big Bone Randy hit it right to Dan's
Don't ever. I don't know why coaches do this. Don't ever settle for a 45 to 48 yard field goal when you can get closer.
Left,
it's exhausting.
Running a quick out, get 5-10 more yards.
You have to factor in the moment as well. This is not the guys just stroking it in practice. You need to give them more latitude there, and you put your kicker in a bad spot, and he failed you, and that's the way it is.
Happens all the time.
And by the way,
he also looked like he knew he was going to miss that kick. The look on his face,
well, that's
some look on his face analysis. I like that.
The Titans now, they do this for a reason, the schedule makers. They give you the cookie to start the season at home against the G-Men, and then they say, we're giving you the cookie because we're sending you to Buffalo next week. And guess what? Monday night, they have to now play the Bills, the Titans, and the Giants get the Panthers. So they're potentially set up for a nice start to their season. We're just getting started here. Let's take a break, and then we're gonna welcome in an old friend. All right, and welcome back. Here we are. I told you a friend was joining us. And there he is, a man ready to be married now. Nick Shook.
Ooh.
Welcome back to the flagship program. It's another season together, and congratulations on your upcoming nuptials, sir.
Oh, thank you so much. I hate to kill the running podcast bit, but it had been long enough. I had to get the job done,
Yeah.
Well, how much credit do you give Dan and this show?
It's a good question.
Hopefully a lot. I would imagine
for getting it done, because he's been putting pressure on you for a long time.
I would give it 50% to get the ball rolling,
Oh, wow.
and then you know, then the other 50% was me. I mean, it's a lot, right? You know, no, I'm just kidding. You guys gave me a little nudge, but it was going to happen regardless. I was actually waiting to make it real special in LA, and then I got tired of waiting and just said, well, there's a nice beach on Lake Erie and the sun setting. And I woke up that morning and was just said, I'm doing it today.
Well, did you put the ring on a credit card, or did you have that cash stored away like a wise investor?
Funny that you asked that. Interestingly enough, when I first met her, I didn't have a savings account. And that was my inspiration to actually start a savings account, was because one day I thought, I think she might be the one.
Who said romance is dead?
Look at Shook.
He started a savings account for that woman.
That's good, man.
All right, congratulations, Shook. Let's dig in on some AFC North heat, starting with a trip to Cincinnati, checking in with the defending American Football Conference champions.
Straightaway kick. Good snap. Down. Kick is on its way. That kick is long enough. High enough. And it is good. The kick is good. The Steelers survive in Cincinnati. How it happened, it'll take you an hour to tell you.
Bill Hillgrove with the call, WDVE. That might have been Craig Wolfley yelling in the background. Chris Boswell kicked a 53-yard field goal as time expired in overtime, and the Steelers overcome TJ Watt's injury late in the fourth quarter to beat the Bengals 23-20. It was sloppy for both sides, but at the end, Shook, Pittsburgh's win here felt like a near miracle. You had the Bengals failing to convert a PAT at the end of regulation that would have won the game. Then they have a short field goal blocked. I think the snapper was involved in both miscues here. And that opened the door for Trubisky and then Boswell to get it done. And we'll get to TJ Watt in a second, but first let's focus on what was a gutty win for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, a gutty win powered by their defense. I mean, I think Greg would attest to this too. The Steelers defense has a reputation for being good, but it wasn't as good as maybe we thought last year. They reversed that narrative today. I mean, they came out like gangbusters. Micah Fitzpatrick picks off Joe Burrow's first pass of the season for a pick six. TJ Watt jumps up and gets a pick. There's a forced fumble. They're all over him all day. That revamped offensive line struggled specifically at left guard, and the Steelers took advantage of that. They put them on short fields. Trubisky didn't have to do too much offensively because 2 of their 4 scoring drives started in Cincinnati territory. It wasn't until they actually kicked the game winner that they went close to the length of the field to get in position for that. And that wasn't even close really to the length of the field, but they started on their own 20. So all the credit in the world goes to their defense. Their offense still has some steps to take forward. But man, this is a group that made some additions in the offseason, and all of those additions really paid off. Cam Sutton had a nice up and down performance where he made some big plays, had also some big errors, but redeemed himself. If you're a Steelers fan, you got to feel excited, not because of what you saw necessarily from Mitch Trubisky, but the fact that defense looks like it's back to where you expect it to be. And if it can be like this all year, then you're going to be in every game you play. Yeah,
but is it going to be like that without TJ Watt? He left with a pectoral injury. The report is that they're fearing it's a torn pectoral injury. He was almost seen mouthing, I tore my pec. So that's what they think, and that'll usually keep you out for much of the season. And they're thin there. And yes, I hear what you're saying. I'm looking forward to watching it, but it's pretty rare that you win a game or a game needs to go to overtime when you win the turnover battle 5-0. It's like a little bit of a double-edged sword there, where you lost the first down battle 32-13, and it's great that they ended up getting the win there, but you would almost expect them to win by more in that kind of situation.
Yeah, they didn't sustain the offense that you wanted. Trubisky hit some passes that you were like, oh, okay, look, he looks pretty decent. Pat Freiermuth down the sideline, finding a couple different guys down the sideline. But if you look at it statistically, very average, 21-38, a passer rating below 80, and they lost the time of possession battle in a big way. That, like you mentioned, with the first down difference, they didn't sustain drives for most of the day. Najee Harris was his rushing yards over expected were in the negative, so they didn't block well enough for him to really.
And he was hurt too.
He left the game for a big chunk of it.
Yeah, he left with a foot injury, and he had a Lisfranc injury in camp too, so that's concerning.
Keep an eye on that. It's the same foot. The Bengals had the ball for 43 minutes and 43 seconds in this game. It did go through overtime to the very end. But, yeah, that would be my concern, and I'm looking forward to watching this game because, yes, it's a gutty win, maybe a miracle win, but 231 yards of total offense and maybe Najee Harris down now. And now you take out TJ Watt for maybe the season, maybe deep into the second half. And you feel like, Mark, that maybe the Steelers, even with a win today, there's reason to be concerned.
Well, I think their offensive line is a major concern. They're lucky that they have Mitch Trubisky. What the assets that he brings is mobility, is escapability. I don't think they're going to be able to work themselves out of jams week after week. This kind of was the weirdest game. I was watching this from wire to wire, and it's one of the weirdest performances. I have to ask you this, though, Nick, because you look at Joe Burrow, and the Bengals all offseason, I feel like they were being disrespected a little bit and thinking people they might tail off a little bit. But Joe Burrow was the reason that you had faith they get back to where they were. Did you come out of this with genuine concern for Joe Burrow, or was it just an off day?
I felt more like an off day, some rust, some lack of reps. I mean, he did miss a good portion of training camp with that appendix removal. So it felt like he was kind of shaking off the rust, and he made some bad decisions. He was also pressured into some bad decisions. Like I said, the left guard was a huge problem for me watching their offensive line play, because that's supposed to be the one weakness that they improved in the offseason, and it just didn't stand up today. It didn't hold up against the test of the Steelers front. And you give Pittsburgh some credit, but he still made plays. He still got them in situations to be able to score and led them back. But I mean, they're in the red zone on multiple occasions and struggling to get 3 yards, struggling to get into the end zone when they're on the doorstep of the goal line. They need 4th down to be able to score the game-tying touchdown. They leave points on the board just before halftime because, again, they're right on the doorstep of the end zone and they don't convert. So their strength with Burrow is downfield. But when the field gets shortened, I am a little concerned about their ability to move the football there. They're not going to face a defense like this every week. But so, I mean, to answer your question in kind of a rambling way, it was more rust than anything. I still have confidence in him. He still made the plays. I think he's just got to get his feet underneath him.
This was a really fun game to watch. By the end of it, it was almost exhausting because those late games were starting and you were like, all right, guys, let's wrap this up. It's a little sloppy. My favorite call, and I think Greg and I both reacted in real time to it, was Iron Eagle. Boswell won the game with the long kick, but he nearly won it earlier in overtime with a kick at the last moment, knuckled and drilled the upright at like 87 miles per hour. Let's listen into Iron Eagle with the call.
From 55 yards away, Boswell. No good! What is happening here?
Gravedigger, we might want to trim what is happening here for our own show going forward. All right, Shook. So that's the situation with the Steelers. That's the situation with the Bengals, who, by the way, go to Dallas to get the Cowboys next week at 0-1. Now,
what a come down there for the Bengals.
Yeah,
Oof.
and I know one last thing on that because it's so important. They had the game won on the late Jamar Chase touchdown as time expired. And they get the PAT blocked by who else? Minka Fitzpatrick. And then there was an issue on the snap as well on the short field goal kick. What was the background there with the snapper and what happened with the Bengals?
The background was that was not their starting long snapper. That was a replacement who was kind of thrown in there. And obviously they had some
That feels like an
there.
underrated plot line in football, whether it's the long snapper or the kicker. There's nobody behind him you could trust. So when those guys go out, you're in
Bad day
trouble.
at work, for sure.
There's nothing worse, though, like for a Bengals season that was just riding as high as possible until the very end last year, to lose to the Steelers at home, missing these two types of kicks. That's as bad as it gets.
All right, and let's now move to, listen, we don't know where Mark's journey is as a fan, but I know Shooky, he's born and bred. He's Ohio, and the Browns had a game today against the Carolina Panthers, and it ended well.
13 seconds remaining. He lines it up. Bojorquez with his knee on the ground at the 48. Hewlett over the ball. Back. He's into it. Line drive. End over end. The kick is up, and it is. And it is good. And York hit the field goal from 58 yards out with 8 seconds left to go in the ball game.
Great call by Jim Donovan, WKRK. Here's the quote from Marc Sessler, immediately to my left.
Not my middle name.
Oh, God, Cleveland just won. What does it mean? We're going to get into that later. What was the inflection all about? What was in his heart and his head? Rookie Cade York kicked a go-ahead 58-yard field goal with 8 seconds to play. Kareem Hunt scored 2 times. And the Browns said, Baker, you're not going to have anybody up. Vengeance denied. 26-24 win over the Panthers for the Browns in Charlotte. Shooky, the Browns had a messy offseason, to say the least, but a dramatic win in the season opener is how they wanted to turn the page.
Yeah, and part of the offseason transition included a replacement of color commentator in the booth. The person you hear screaming and almost voice cracking is Nathan Zagura, the senior broadcaster for the team. He's made his color commentary debut. Shout out to him and understanding that he couldn't control his emotions in that situation.
He is an enthusiastic individual.
Yeah, he certainly is. So, I mean, this is a game that result-wise surprised me. I had picked the Panthers and got all the heat from the Browns fans this week, understandably so. And mainly because I didn't think the Browns could actually put up this many points. Not that 26 is a lot of points, but if you watch their offense in this game, they can't move the ball very consistently unless it's on the ground. They ran the crap out of the football on the ground, had over 200 rushing yards as a team. I think the finish with 217 on the ground. Obviously, Nick Chubb carrying the way with 141 on 22 carries, but Kareem Hunt was really the X factor offensively. He had a touchdown reception, lined up as a fullback in the I formation on the goal line, which is a dead giveaway. Fullback flat. Hello, they're going to throw it to Hunt in the flat. Look out for that. The Panthers did not. But he also ripped off a nice touchdown run.
Nutshell there. That regime.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Not prepared in the situation with the personnel. But that, and then Donovan Peoples-Jones made a handful of really clutch catches throughout the game. That's a guy that the Browns are really going to need to step up offensively. So the story of the game is controlled the clock, controlled possession on the ground, and did enough defensively to help yourself field position-wise, get in situations where you can maybe put some points on the board. They left a lot of points out there on the field, however, which is concerning and goes back to why I picked them to lose this game.
Shooky, and as much as we can deride Carolina's coaching staff, the idea that anyone thinks that Jacoby Brissett with that surrounding cast of playmakers is going to put up big points. Nobody thinks that. So was Carolina stacking the box? Do we have 8 and 9 facing these two running backs? Because that feels like how everyone should be playing the Browns, and they shouldn't be able to move the ball at all.
Not on a per down basis. There were times where I only saw 6 guys in the box, and you got to credit the Browns offensive line. The one thing they've been able to do under Kevin Stefanski is block well on outside runs. They were able to do that very effectively today and give Nick Chubb just enough room to hit that one cut and burst up the field and rip off some nice runs. I think I saw a graphic late in the game where it was average down and distance on third down. The Panthers were something like 10 plus and the Browns were at 6.6. And that all goes back to the fact that you can stay on schedule on first and second down running the football. Even late when they had to get in position to kick that game-winning field goal, they were still going to the run because they knew it was their best way to move the football. So they're built to be able to win games like this if they can get defensive stops. They played a really good half defensively until the final possession for the Panthers. They had some blown coverages, and then the avalanche came because, again, they blew some coverages. It looked like Baker Mayfield was going to lead a comeback win, but ultimately the Browns got something that they never get in this situation, which is a clutch kick. Usually they're on the losing end of this situation. I'm sitting there watching it. Bridget's here, now my fiance.
Bridget.
And I'm looking at her going, no chance he makes this.
Bridget.
No chance he makes this. He's not making this field goal. They're losing this game, and he drilled it. So a nice turn of events for the Browns.
When the last time they won an opener, which I mentioned this 400 times on the broadcast, was the first year I moved to LA, which was 2004. That is an absurd anti-streak right there. So this was big for the Browns.
It sure was. Shooky, any other thoughts about Mayfield? Did you think that he played well in this game? I know it started off extremely slowly, but he really came on and almost stole it.
He was putrid in the first half. A lot of the familiar things for Baker. Passes knocked down at the line of scrimmage. Really ugly interception thrown. Offense looking out of sync. But when guys were open, he did find them, and he really hit his stride in the second half, especially in the fourth quarter. It looked like a textbook Mayfield comeback game, but this time he did not end up on the winning end.
This was a tough spot. I wanted both of these teams to lose. And not that I was a huge Baker fan before the last couple of weeks, but he's completely lost me. So I was rooting against him. And then, I'm, of course, rooting against the Browns sort of semi-permanently. So it was like there was no way to win this game.
What was up with the Christian McCaffrey usage here? Only 14 touches. Is this go back to them now just being so paranoid about him getting hurt that they're really trying to ease him out of the offense a little bit?
Well, they tried to get him the ball early, and the Browns did a really good job of bottling him up. It wasn't until the second half that he really made a difference. He had a nice run on 3rd and 7 where he broke 4 tackles to move the chains on one of their key scoring drives. But yeah, just not a big enough of a focal part of the offense. And the big reason was they just had no rhythm offensively. They had no opportunity to kind of continuously feed him the football because they were constantly behind schedule, 3rd and long. And the Browns knew that the screens were coming, and it just didn't give him a lot of opportunities. Now, he did score a touchdown going airborne, which I was like, oh man, don't get hurt, just because of how he's gotten hurt in the past. I would anticipate that they work him in more because that's their best chance. No matter who they have at receiver and tight end, he's still their best chance to go win games. So they have to be feeding him more than they did on Sunday.
All right. So now let's talk. Greg, I'll start with you on this, just you and me. Where did you see Sessler? How was Sessy in the newsroom to you? And we've known him for a decade, and no one loves the Browns more than Marc Sessler. And Shook's in the distant rear view. I'm sorry, Nick. Like this was the Marc that we knew was in love, and I thought some of the comments he was making maybe spoke to that was still inside him, which was my curiosity entering Sunday's action.
Right. I mean, you can even go back to Wednesday or so on our text thread when he found out that this was Shook's game, and he was like, "What? That Shook's game? That right there was the early tell. That was an early tell." But it was like, okay, you can still watch it. You can still watch it.
Well, that's kind of the point,
right? And then you mentioned that quote that he said, "Oh God, the Browns won," and I'll let you talk about the tone of that quote.
Yeah.
But one thing I've noticed with
there
Marc,
was one more. I have it marked, by the way, at 3:54 p.m. Eastern when apparently the quarterback for Cleveland did something. Jacoby Brissett making a play.
Right. I do remember that.
It was a rare sight.
But if you kind of just make that a different game, is he saying Kirk Cousins making a play in that situation? I don't hear that.
Well,
so one thing I've noticed over the years with Marc, though, is post-Browns game. So I'm going to take it till the game's over.
We'll get to you, Marc. Just hang on a second.
Post-Browns game, following a victory, he'll be really excited for the early parts of the next game.
Absolutely.
He'll be super into it. He'll be like really fired up about what's happening to Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes and certain things. If they win, if they lose, sometimes it's a little bit more of a quieter Marc. You know what I mean? And he had a special sort of zeal even
post
in the
step.
Yeah, exactly. Everything had a little more light to it. So this
is your impression.
Shook, do you have any take on this? Anything you've been watching from a distance with Marc?
I think it's Greg summed it up best in a text. He asked me what my games were for this week, and of course I listed the Browns and the Panthers, and he texted me back, "You will make it easier for Marc to give up the Browns." Yep. And I said, "I will bear his cross."
Yeah, that's nice of you.
All right, do you have anything to add about? Did you feel anything, flicker inside you during that stirring comeback there at the end?
I'm trying to explain this to you probably 2-3 times a week. I'm comfortable with my decision, and I actually was enjoying football more in general today because I wasn't emotionally attached to one team.
Or was it because the Browns won?
And that did not really. I know what we're attempting to do here, Greg. I think I was probably commenting on 8 or 9 games today.
Sure,
and you know
but now we have to read into that he's going to try to camouflage it in a way because he knows we're going to do conversations like this. But the thing that gets me more than anything is him repeating insistently, "I feel nothing. It's no different than any other game." So how could that even be possible? How could you feel nothing? Even if you're somehow landing in the middle, you still have all this history. You have Baker Mayfield was the guy. You have Deshaun Watson and that idea which turned you off so much. You have all your years with the Browns, and yet that lands on "I feel nothing." That doesn't all add up. Even if it's confusing, you surely feel something.
That's your psychology.
And this is not. I don't want you to see this as ganging up on you, Marc. It's really. It's an important in terms of the podcast and a character study of someone that we work with very closely to get to the bottom of this. And the investigation will continue as the season continues.
I will say one thing for Nick and for other people. I have nothing against people that are sticking with the Browns, that are lifelong Browns fans. I'm happy for them when they win. It's just I have removed myself from the situation.
He's building a bridge back.
I'm happy for you, Nick.
Absolutely excited about what's occurring.
I'll say this. As somebody who had many huddle-up conversations with Sessler in the newsroom back in the day after the Browns suffered yet another excruciating loss, I find it hard to believe that he will be able to separate so easily through the course of this season.
We'll leave it at that.
All right.
Nick Shook from Cleveland checking in. We'll see you next week, buddy.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Shooky with some corkers there.
Yeah, big time. Let's take a break, and we'll be right back. All right, we say goodbye to Shook, and let us head to the NFC North. Wild stuff going on here. Well, that's strong.
Maybe oversell.
He'll throw right. Look at that. Jefferson uncovered. 2015 can. Dances to the right to the 5. Dives for the end zone. Touchdown! And JJ is killing him again. It's a 36-yard touchdown, and Minnesota leads.
Great call there by Paul Allen, KFAN. we're old enough to have seen Randy Moss at his apex with the Vikings, and I didn't think I'd ever see anybody that could approach Moss, and probably won't. But the fact that the Vikings have another absolute monster stud in his early 20s with Justin Jefferson, that's nice. That's riches. Justin Jefferson went off for 184 and 2 touchdowns, leading the Vikings with Kirk Cousins, of course, to a 23-7 win over the Packers in Kevin O'Connell's debut. And this one is a tough way, Greg, for the Packers to begin their defense of the NFC North title.
No, looking so hapless on both sides of the ball was shocking to me. And maybe I shouldn't be as shocked, because Justin Jefferson, as you mentioned, is a big-time player. Dalvin Cook is a big-time player. Danielle Hunter and now Zadarius Smith, who had great games, both of them are big-time players. And there's this idea that the Vikings are just blah. They're boring. They're the same team every year. And maybe that's where they'll land this year. But they do have awesome players at the heart of it if they don't get in their own way. And most of the second half was spent with Hanzus, who had a lot of correct predictions, mid-game predictions, that went well for him today. But what didn't go well was him saying, the Vikings are going to Viking here, and this one's going to keep getting closer. And you know what? It didn't, because their defense stood up.
They did.
Their offense held the ball enough in the second half, even if they really only got a couple field goals there. And most importantly, as you mentioned, Justin Jefferson is just outrageous. You mentioned he's not going to be another Moss. Well, Randy Moss is the only player in NFL history to have as many 150-yard games this young in this stage of his career as Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fascination to watch him. And I think the flip side of this was that this was not last year's Packers on offense or the year before, because the Davante Adams free Packers, unlike the Chiefs missing Tyreek Hill, did not have an answer. And I thought that Aaron Rodgers, that in the first half especially, they had one drive out of 7 that went for more than 13 yards. They looked confused to me. There were big mistakes. We talked about this too as a group, that Christian Watson dropped what would have been a home run touchdown.
That set the tone for the whole game.
That was literally the first pass of the season. Would have been a 75-yard touchdown.
Is that a harbinger of doom for Green Bay?
They dialed it up in a way, I think, to send I don't know if they dialed it up to send a message, but they dialed it up knowing okay, here's the first play of the season. Yeah. Can we get Watson for 75? Perfect throw by Rodgers, and it goes right through his hands. They
had A.J. Dillon stuffed on the goal line in a possession that would have changed this game a lot. Because I know what you're saying, Dan, because the Vikings were hot. And then they cooled down significantly for such a long stretch of time that you could see the Packers with a wide open door to get back into the game. But Aaron Rodgers, who looked as frustrated as I've seen him in a long time, and he looked a little banged up at stretches for me too. He was getting hit hard. And this to me was a very harbinger of doom for the Packers, although I remember how they started last year too.
I'll use it again. It's just week 1, so we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but you're right. It's not a great start for them, and I'll tell you exactly the moment where I was like, okay, I know the Vikings. We all know the Vikings. We know what the Packers have done, especially in the regular season under LaFleur with Rodgers winning back-to-back MVPs. They got it. They were down 20-0 in the second quarter. They get the touchdown. They finally get on the board, 7 plays, 75 yards. Then they get a punt. So now they have the ball back in the third quarter, down 27, and I'm thinking to myself, they're going to go down the field, they're going to make it 20-14, and then that Minnesota offense, which under the prior regime with Kirk Cousins there, can go to sleep. They could be on fire for stretches, and then they can go into deep funks where they go into a 3-and-out binge. And I thought it was going to be a situation where Rodgers has the ball down 6 late in the game. And yet, credit to Minnesota's defense, because of the fact that Minnesota, despite all this great fireworks from Jefferson, they only finished with 23 points in this game, but they made it stand up because the Vikings defense did not let Aaron Rodgers get things rolling, and you definitely felt it, Greg. I mean, I know Davante Adams did well with Derek Carr statistically today, but you felt there were moments in the game where it's like, oh, this is where Davante would give him a big pick-me-up.
Sure.
And it's going to take time, you think, for the Packers to find that.
I mean, A.J. Dillon was their leading receiver. And then beyond that, it was nice to see Robert Tonyan back in the mix. He looks good. Beyond that, their 2 leading wideouts were Doubs and Watson, 2 rookies. And so I think it'll come eventually. Sammy Watkins was in this game and didn't make a big difference. Alan Lazard hopefully returns. They were missing a lot of players. So David Bakhtiari and Elgton Jenkins. It's a very hard name to say. Elgton. You're just not used to it.
Possibly a misspelling on the birth certificate.
Both players were cautiously expected to play in this game, and so you went. And then neither one of them did, and they also lost Runyon, their starting guard, during the game. So suddenly you're down 3 offensive linemen. So if you're trying to make this receiver salad kind of work, you at least need to have that really strong offensive line. The combination of the two made it look like their last game that they played, which was against the 49ers in the playoffs. If you're not protecting them and you don't have those guys out wide, you're just going to be a total mess. And the Vikings were extremely physical. Like Zadarius Smith, DJ Wanham, Hunter, they all look fresh, and I give their coaching staff some credit here because it's a new coaching staff. Ed Donatell's their defensive coordinator. He had a play at the goal line that really mixed up Rodgers. I think Greg Olsen, who did a great job in his first game officially as the number one guy, really explained it, and he confused Aaron Rodgers. And they have a new coaching staff on both sides. It was a very calm and composed game where I think Kirk Cousins played with a lot of clarity. So if we want to give the coaches some credit, we give it to them. Maybe it's just the players. Either way, it was like a very strong opening salvo by O'Connell.
Yeah, if you're O'Connell, I mean, you're having to deal with the Packers in Week 1, and it kind of tells you everything that this journey could be for them. And so I love the win. I mean, I get concerned for Aaron Rodgers. There was a play where 3 Vikings defenders essentially just descended on him and destroyed him, and it resulted in a fumble. And it's like, Aaron Rodgers is not built like Josh Allen. You always just worry about the Aaron Rodgers collarbone situation, things like that.
Yeah, he looks stretching out his neck a lot.
He looked uncomfortable, and it's just like, he also is the kind of guy that if you're going to get him agitated and frustrated early on, you're going to hear about it. And I cannot wait to see what his comments are.
The Packers get the Bears at home Sunday Night Football next week. The Vikings get the Eagles on Monday Night Football next week. That's going to be a great early. Ooh, who missed their lock?
Only one person missed their lock this week.
Oh,
who was it?
Well,
not the Titans fan. Hopefully not.
No. Great week 1. Week 1s are hard to read. I'm not even worried about it.
Digging his own grave. I mean, Graver was flying high. He introduced Jessica for the first time really meaningfully
what a
to us
woman.
in a social situation. Yes, we met her briefly at the holiday party, but that was kind of at the point in the relationship where Graver was
we weren't sure what to make of it at that
trying
point.
to keep it on the down low a little bit. And
that was slightly suspicious that night.
That was wonderful.
Not last night, though.
And he left just feeling, I think, great about everything. He's part of the team and is a great woman.
It was like when at the holiday party, they were in the shadows.
Yes.
Right.
And I felt like when we got together on the eve of the season, it was stepping into the light. And it was a wonderful time. So think about that. Think about your relationship and all the good things you have in your life.
That's what I would say. This is what I would, if I were to sing a little song for Gravedigger, I'd be like, his team lost. He lost his lock. When it rains, it pours. But he still has Jessica.
That was beautiful. Jessica. We don't get that song that the Browns lost.
Jessica.
Today.
Right.
No, that's not. This is I care about his well-being.
Thank you, Mark.
He sang that song in the back too. He was really full-throated. It was beautiful.
And speaking of the Vikings, yes, they have the Eagles on Monday night, but they also have a game in London against the
Saints,
New Orleans Saints, and we'll be there, and we're going to be doing our live show from London the Thursday, September 29th, I want to say. Let's make sure we get that right. And tickets are on sale on Ticketmaster.
That's right.
And we have made some adjustments.
We have. Well, it's like the Packers offense. They're going to need to making some adjustments.
Let's not
throughout the
compare
course of the
ourselves to
season.
them, please.
No, we're not. We're not at that level. I really want to say thank you to all the listeners who have bought tickets. We've had an amazing response, and they're going quickly. But we also heard from a lot of listeners that thought the price point was
too high.
A little high, and I get it. We're not super involved in all that decision. And
don't pass the buck, Rosenthal.
I'm just saying we're learning as we go,
well,
and our relationship with the listeners is paramount to us. And so we're learning as we go, as we're trying out these new things. And
so tickets are free.
We did work it out with Ticketmaster, with Live Nation, that we have 25-pound tickets now will be available on Ticketmaster as of Monday morning.
And if
so
you
by
want
the
us to
time people
lower it
hear
further,
this,
we're going to be paying to do that venue. So.
We were not looking to box anyone out financially. Like we were, you know,
we're just like, okay, tell us what to do. We're going to do it. And so because we want as many people as possible to come see it, and we heard from a lot of you, and we want to listen to the seats in the balcony, or we've opened up some seats in the balcony that'll be £25.
Absolutely.
Go check them out.
And Mark will personally meet and greet with each of you in the balcony. All right, let us now. Well, that's not technically true, but
it's
maybe
news to me.
We'll see. All right, let
Don't
us
put
now
that
move
out
on.
there because then we're going to encounter more
Their DMs
agitation.
Ticketmaster.com. Search around the NFL. London. Here we go. Let's move on to the highest scoring game of week 1. It went down at Ford Field. Get the grid out.
Hurts takes the snap. He's pumping. He is going deep. And it is caught down the far sideline by A.J. Brown. He lurches forward across the 5, down to the 4. He was covered. That was a great pass and a great catch.
Oh, no. Gravedigger. Oh, he brings out the bongos. That's a pro. Give me the bongos. Give me the bongos. He still got Jessica. He still got Jessica. Even though A.J. Brown went off today in his first game in a Eagles uniform. That is Merrill Reese, WIP with the call. Jalen Hurts. 333 total yards and a touchdown. A.J. Brown, a career high, tying 155 yards in his debut with the Eagles. And Philly holds on 38-35 over the Lions at Ford Field. The Eagles scored 24 points in the second quarter. They were up 17 in the fourth. And then Jared Goff in Detroit, they put some lipstick on that piggy, Greggy. But the Eagles are going to be a problem for defenses, aren't they?
A.J. Brown's going to be a problem. I'm digging the grave of that trade. It was a bad idea. You could have found the money to keep him if they really wanted to.
That's enough. You're taking it too far.
Okay.
I agree with Greg. Should have found the money.
They could have figured it out.
Of course they could have, but we don't need to relitigate that. Let Justin die in peace.
Here's
you
the
sure
thing,
hope
though.
Justin doesn't go home and then suddenly Jessica's annoyed with him about something off the cuff, too. He does not need it today.
That's a totally fair point. Here's the thing, though. A.J. Brown was the difference in this game. I believe if A.J. Brown was not on this team, if the Eagles had not made this trade, they actually lose this game because while some parts of this matchup were similar to a year ago, ultimately Philadelphia ran the ball when they needed to. It was not just lipstick on a pig. I mean, at the very end of the game, the Eagles needed to get multiple first downs to salt this game away, and they were able to by running. And they took a very gutsy 4th and 1 call where Jalen Hurts barely got it, or else they would have turned the ball back over to the Lions, who might have just won this game the way their offense was going. But A.J. Brown's ability to make contested catches in tight traffic and then make a couple plays after the catch, after he made those tough catches, made Jalen Hurts look better. Because I think those were the same throws he threw last year, and they just went incomplete, or they were like a 7-yard gain.
I mean, it's the guy that the Eagles have been looking for years,
right.
To be that type of guy that makes the quarterback better, and that's what they have in play here right now.
So Devontae Smith, though, I'm looking at his line, 0 yards, 0
That was
catches.
weird. 4 targets. Brown definitely had most of the attention. I think Smith had a drop in there. I wouldn't be concerned about that just because their offense was extremely efficient. This was not a game with a ton of possessions considering how many points were scored. I believe, including the last drive, which was very effective, they won the game on it. They only had 10 drives, and you put up 38 points. That wasn't a problem. Jalen Hurts' legs also, which I still think are weirdly overlooked, were the other difference, too, because early in the game, they did not really play well on offense. He was getting confused by blitzes, and yet the Lions were blitzing and getting to Jalen Hurts, and he was making them pay with his legs. He ends up with 90 yards on the ground. Very few of those were called runs. He had a couple effective called runs, but most of them were scrambles where it's like, this drive's going to end unless Jalen Hurts goes and picks up 14 yards here. Let's go pick up 14 yards.
I feel very close to Dan Campbell after covering the Hard Knocks season with Colleen Wolfe. I do want to hear from Coach Grit himself after the loss. Let's see how Campbell was doing.
This is game 1, and we got a long season here. And I said the good news is that we didn't play very well, and we lost by 3. That's what you can take away from this. Now, if we just take this whole approach where every week it's like, well, we lost by 3. Well, we lost by 3. We lost by 3. Then what are we doing? So we got to clean this up, and we got to be better. We got to be a lot better in all areas.
He's right, because they have now graduated from it being good enough to be competitive. That was last year, and that's why everybody liked them, because they were very easy to root for. But I'm not saying you needed to win this game, but this can't be the story of the Lions again, or else it's not really working.
I mean, if we look at week 1 and say the outcomes are far more variable and bizarre than you're going to get over the course of other weeks typically, they lost to Philadelphia 44-6 a year ago, and that was in the middle of the season. And that by that point, the Eagles had figured out what they wanted to be, a run-heavy juggernaut. But I look at this game for the Lions and say, number one, they started off with a great drive out of the gate, and they looked like they kind of did in the preseason to me. I know they gave up a ton of points, but I think it's a tough team on both sides of the line. They only got 1 sack on Hurts today. I mean, he was really well protected by that line in general, but this is not a disaster for Detroit on any level.
And DeAndre
Swift looks great. Yes, but I think you're playing one of the more dangerous offenses around.
No, I mean, the Lions are one of the worst defenses in the league last year. I think their secondary has potential to be one of the worst in the league. I think at moments they played fairly well, but Campbell was like, we got to improve in all phases. No, your defense is lousy. You need to improve your defense. And I know Goff struggled late in the second quarter. He had like 13 yards, and so they started slow offensively, but they still put up 35, and Swift had the best game of his career. They were missing 2 offensive linemen at guard, and they ran really well. So I don't know. It just seems like a defensive problem to me.
Yeah, 17 rushes for Hurts, that seems a little high. I don't know. You okay with that? Him running the ball that much?
It was a lot.
One off his career high.
It was not. Most of them were not called. So you mentioned there was only 1 sack. They got free rushers, and they blitzed and confused him quite a bit, and then he would just beat the free rushers.
Right.
Okay, well, that's different.
But it also, I think, speaks to how teams will attack the Eagles, because they didn't really have a lot of answers passing-wise early for that, but his legs were the answer.
All right, so let us –
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes, Marky. You and I.
You and I both.
That's a good way to start.
We should pick the same team every week.
Well, that doesn't sound as fun, but...
No, because can I tell you what?
Well, let's not fight it.
Can I tell you why?
Yeah,
because it was agitating Greg.
Well, no, it wasn't
the Eagles.
It was the Eagles. That was what was agitating. I wanted to just
we put Greg into a psychological jar, and he didn't know what to do.
We twisted him into an emotional pretzel, and that was fun.
It distressed him.
If you could upset Greg physically or emotionally, then it's like, all right.
Then your Sunday has
why should that be a goal of any friend?
Not that that's what I try to do. That's not. I don't want to do that, Greg. But just knowing it happens occasionally, it's like, oh, Greg's human. He feels things.
Yes.
And I could connect with him in a
mentally
way.
and physically. I'm struggling on this Sunday.
It added a nice element to, we spend 9-10 hours together on Sundays. It added a nice element to that.
Yes, Greg's gutting through he's not feeling great. So we appreciate you putting forth.
Well, he's not feeling well, and then I asked, is it possible that you're going to be giving us what you have? And I'm sitting 2 feet away from Greg, and I didn't get a clear answer on that.
Yeah. Then we're going to be locking up something together.
Yeah.
We're going to be headlocking Rosenthal from the infirmary. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. Let's roll on.
10th play of the drive for the Bears. I formation under center. Fields takes and fakes with time. Lofts to an open. Epimenius St. Brown to the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown Bears! He feathered it in there beautifully. Epimenius grabbed it in the end zone.
Jeff Joniak with a call, WBBM. I like that move, that Equanimous St. Brown, where you catch the touchdown or you cross into the end zone, then you fire the ball into the wall.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost better when you're in someone else's building and it's their logo and you hit their logo with the ball. But in this case, he fired into the Chicago Bears logo. And that's fine, because everything's fine around the Bears right now, because the Eberflus revolution is upon us. Justin Fields threw 2 second-half touchdowns, including that go-ahead score to Equan St. Brown. Eddie Jackson set up a TD with an interception. And yes, the Bears beat the Niners 19-10 on a rainy day in Chicago. Hey, Marc Sessler, weather is the ultimate equalizer. Am I right?
Well, you're dead right. And I'm not surprised that you are. But the rain in this game, at times it became manageable, but there were moments of intense downpour. I mean, it's almost hard to evaluate the quarterback play in this one.
That was going to be my follow-up question, which
Yeah.
is how much do you put in this game because of the weather? How much did that play a role, or should we be giving Chicago a lot of credit for what happened here?
I do give them credit just because the Niners, if anything, you believe in their defense entirely. And when Justin Fields, who had 19 yards in the first half and really was not a factor, he found holes in the Niners secondary to make some big plays. He had a 51-yard touchdown strike. He had that one to Equanimeous St. Brown. I mean, where he had two guys open on that. I thought he saw the field well there. So he made the most of it. Both teams ran the ball 37 times, but I think the Niners probably came into the game wanting to do that to begin with. Trey Lance was not going to the air very early on because of the weather. But Trey Lance, to me, and it's going to be a real week-to-week journey with Trey Lance because he will always do things in a game that make you believe. But there were times when he looked really lost to me, and he generated 3 points in the second half. They couldn't get out of their own way. Its quarterback looks like it will be a liability at times, but because of the natural environment.
Was that because of the weather with Lance,
it's
or
not,
because
it's
of
not
where
entirely
he was
because
at?
of the weather, because he's been all over the map all summer, and I think it's a lot. Like, they really broke down the fact that, like, this Niners offense, while it's quarterback friendly and it's well coached, the terminology, the whole mental process of taking on what they're asking a quarterback to do takes time. It's not easy. And this is someone that has not played a lot of football in the past couple of years, and he's got the gifts. I mean, I thought there were a couple times when Trey Lance stood up in the pocket and made a throw when he could have in a different place. If he were a little bit lower on his maturity at this point on the field, he would have taken off to scramble. Like, I mean, he tried to make plays, but this was not their day. And I really thought that some of the defensive breakdowns led to Justin Fields saving it for the Bears. This is a big win. I mean, this is a Super Bowl type team, the Niners, and people were looking at the Bears as a bottom 5 operation. They're clearly rebuilding. I don't think anyone expected this to happen. It's a nice moment for Chicago.
Right. They only had 204 total yards. They were outgained by 127 yards. So it's not a traditional win, but who cares if you're the Chicago Bears? And the 49ers, in terms of bad weather, it's like that's how they got to the NFC Championship, is they found a way to win a bad weather game. Losing Elijah Mitchell so early in the game.
What's his situation?
It did not sound like a good
injury. He did not come back. Jeff Wilson came in. But, I mean, I don't know. To be honest, it wasn't helpful at all. But isn't it every season that the Niners are losing running backs early on and often?
But I feel like Elijah Mitchell was so easily the number one most talented guy on that team.
They could have used George Kittle today also.
Now that Mostert's not there. And one thing to watch really for the rest of the season, and I will when I watch this game, is that they have 4 new offensive line starters, none of them with pedigree, almost none of them with any playing experience, almost none of them, being drafted in the first 5 rounds. On most teams, that's all anyone would talk about, but because it's the 49ers and they will get McGlinchey back who's hurt, people are just like, well, Shanahan always figures it out, but it's something to watch.
It is, and 99 yards and penalties, just a sloppy start to the season. I'm going to watch this game. I want to figure out what's going on. I have Bears fans getting on me in the mentions because I had the Bears at 32 in the power rankings. Like, well, we beat your team at number 3. Well, yeah, that's fair.
It's a nice win.
It's a nice win for them, but I do want to see both of these teams on a dry track and see where things are a week from now. But taking nothing away from Chicago, that's a big win. And again, a city that's starving for anything of interest to beat the Niners, who came within a fourth quarter meltdown of going to the Super Bowl last year. Very nice.
Yeah, that crowd was going nuts.
Very nice start. All right, let us keep moving on. Let's head to Miami.
Back to throw. Blitz coming. They got him. The ball's out. Touchdown, Miami. Ingram picked it up on the bounce.
Yes, that Melvin Ingram. No gloves on. Doesn't wear the gloves. I always like that. No taped wrists. He's just
That's
a
how
ball
I played.
player. Jimmy Cefalo, WQAM, with the call. Safety Brandon Jones screamed off the corner, wallops Mac Jones. The ensuing fumble scooped up and run in for a score by Ingram. The signature play for the Dolphins in a 20-7 win over the Patriots in Mike McDaniel's debut as head coach of the Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa threw for 270 and a touchdown. Flashed some chemistry with Tyreek Hill, who was involved early and often. But this was about the defense, and they were the star in this game, and the Patriots managed a single scoring drive on a day that ended with Mac Jones dipping into an x-ray room to get his back looked at. They canceled his subsequent press availability because of that. So as we record this, we don't know if that's a serious issue or what. But here we are, Greg. This is where we're at right now. I thought that the Patriots, the score tells, you score once in all these drives, not a good day for the offense. The fact that Mac Jones could be hurt, that could be a disaster for this offense. But I think the second quarter...
It could be night if he misses multiple games.
Absolutely.
Brian Hoyer.
It was the second quarter where they let the game go away. The second quarter, when you watch this game, you'll say, oh, that's the Patriots offense that we heard about all summer. The rest of the game, they moved the ball at times, on the ground especially. So it wasn't an out-and-out disaster, that you might expect, but at the same time, results are results, and this is a relatively easy win from Miami, despite the fact that it looks like it was somewhat close.
Right. I mean, trying to take some sort of moral victory, and I've seen, you're not the only one positioning it this way. I've seen it sort in some Patriot circles, like, well, actually, the running game looked pretty professional for most of it. They just had to go away from it, and they moved the ball. It's like, if you're trying to spin positives out of a 7-point performance where you lose by 13 against a Dolphins team that's, it's not the 72 Dolphins here, that just shows you where the bar is right now, and it's at a different level than I think I can remember in the last 20 years. It's concerning. They did lose the turnover battle 3-0. There's no way they're going to be able to survive that way. That's been their most consistent aspect to the Bill Belichick regime is turnover margin. Even with Mac Jones last year, it's one of the ways they ended up being in the top 10 in scoring is they had all these short fields, and that's the way they're going to have to win this year, and it was the opposite today.
The Athletic wrote it this way. The scheme was bad. The receivers couldn't get open. The line struggled. A bad day all around for the offense. And I guess what I'm concerned about a little bit is because I think that we were contemplating a reality where, like, the regular season begins, a switch is flipped, and all this summertime issues, problems, concerns over the offense go away. And it seems to me to be...
I've been more optimistic than others. I didn't even think that would happen. I think this is going to take time.
Yeah.
But
I don't think it's a good...
It's not a good start. You can't say it's a good start. I want to know, who are the playmakers on this team? Kendrick Bourne led the team in receiving last year. Didn't even play till the fourth quarter.
He's been in the doghouse. So, I don't know what he did.
I don't know what happened.
Can they afford to have anyone be in a doghouse right now? They used to be able to do
stuff and this is maybe is getting to a more broad insight on the Patriots, or an attempt at insight that you could get away with that stuff when Tom Brady was the quarterback. If Bourne is a guy that can make plays, get him on the field. Figure whatever it is, get it worked out, or get him out of the building and find someone else that can make those plays. So I wasn't overly won over by Tua and the offense yet. I know it was a nice win. You beat New England again, which is becoming a regular thing for the Dolphins lately. But I still need to see more from their offense. It'll be interesting how they do against Baltimore. In Baltimore, the Ravens played very well against the Jets on defense today. But the Patriots, we're going to see, Greggy, especially if Mac Jones is injured. That's a major problem.
Yeah, their schedule early is not easy as well. I do think that you can look at certain situations with Tua and in this game. First of all, getting the ball that much to Tyreek Hill and letting him make some plays after the catch early. But that 42-yard touchdown to Jalen Waddle with 18 seconds left in the first half, probably the key play of the game, along with that fumble return for the touchdown. That's on a 4th and 7 in an awkward part of the field. That with that much time left, there's 24 seconds left to start the play. That if it's an incompletion there, the Patriots have 20 seconds to go get a field goal. But Mike McDaniel, I think, showing some confidence in his young quarterback.
You could call them stones.
We can call them stones. We've learned what we can talk about. You can talk stones.
That's adequate.
That's showing something. That's not a short 4th down to go for, and for him to reward that confidence with a nice strike that Jalen Waddle does the work. That's great.
I'm trying to think who was on the call for CBS in this game. Maybe it was Dan Fouts. Fouts is still there, right? Is Fouts gone? I can't remember. Whoever it was saying, they should not be doing this. They should not be going for this 4th down near midfield for the reasons Greg said. And then Jalen Waddle catches the ball in stride, and he's gone. So that was kind of a turning point in this game. Tyreek Hill did speak.
It was Adam Archuleta along with Greg Gumbel.
Dan Fouts, is he completely out of the picture?
He is, I believe.
It was Archuleta who was doubting it, and then Archuleta said, you know what? I take that back. Anyway, Tyreek Hill, he was wearing his the Viper. What are they called? Pit Vipers, whatever those glasses are. It's not going to age well, guys.
Dan keeps asking us unanswerable questions.
The Pit Vipers, is that what it is, Graver? You're young. I got thumbs up from people. He's wearing the Pit Vipers, and the Pit Vipers. I just want to let everybody know that lived through the early 90s as a teen when stuff like this was popular. It's going to look really stupid in like 10, 12 years.
I see what you're looking at now. Yeah, that's a hideous choice for.
He was
for
wearing his Pit Vipers in the locker room and talking up Mike McDaniels, who has stones for days.
Oh man, I said this outside, man. Like, hey, McDaniels, he's gonna need a wheelbarrow, man, for his to carry around, man, because he got a lot of. You know what I'm saying? So, gutsy call by him.
We had two ways to describe men's testicles that were bleeped out there, but just know that's what he was referring to. Yeah. The man's got gumption.
He also called him McDaniels. I would maybe at some point, because I think a lot of writers and others did the same out of the gate, but your head coach's last name is McDaniel. I'm just going to let you know.
I didn't even realize I was stealing Tyreek Hill's bit there.
Oh, really?
I mean, I took his point. I said that he had stones.
I thought you were just building to that.
I thought it was a reference to it.
It was more like some people that we've worked over the years. I'm thinking of one in particular who no longer is at our company, but we used to do a show with him. If you would say something in a pre-show meeting, he would always steal whatever your point is and then use it on the show. Yeah. That was kind of what I did to Tyreek Hill right there.
Well, I think he'll get over it. And by the way, there was at Hard Rock Stadium, there was a stadium fire. Someone left on their grill, and then it blew up a bunch of cars.
Oh, no.
So
I shouldn't laugh. That doesn't sound funny.
You can connect that to the Patriots and their offense however you want, but it was an implosion of some kind for New England, and let's see how they get back on track. If they can, let's move on to another AFC East team that once again is trying to get back on track. The Jets hosted the Ravens at the Meadowlands.
Lamar winding up, going deep for Bateman. He's got him! Touchdown! Third touchdown today for Lamar Jackson. And that was a strike from deep, 55 yards.
How long must we sing this song? How long? Jerry Sandusky with the call, WBAL. Lamar Jackson threw 3 touchdown passes, including 2 to Devin Duvernay? I mean, what are we doing here?
I like Duvernay.
He's fine.
I think he's more than a return.
He had like 2 touchdowns.
Yeah. Hook 'em, baby.
Oh, whatever.
Grave digger.
Dig a grave. The Ravens roll past the Jets 24-9 on a rainy Sunday.
So much singing in this show, by the way.
Yeah, very, very talented group. Jackson went 17 of 30 for 213 yards. Touchdown to Rashad Bateman. He threw 1 pick. This came after ESPN reported that Jackson had turned down a 5-year extension worth more than $250 million. So he's doing the Aaron Judge move. He's betting on himself, and he says, I'm going to be the highest paid player in the world after I finish this season. So starting off well for Jackson. Didn't run much in this game. In fact, the Ravens didn't do much in this game on offense initially. The Jets defense came out flying around, but the Ravens defense was better because, and part of that is Jets don't have Lamar Jackson. The Jets have Joe Flacco, and Joe Flacco in front of a line that can't really block well right now, with George Fant struggling specifically after moving back to left tackle, after being at right tackle, after being at left tackle. Snip, snap, snip, snap.
And then they lost their right tackle, right?
They had a rookie. They put in a rookie. I might have missed that. I don't know if he went out with an injury. But anyway, the point is the Jets could not move the ball. The Ravens made enough plays, and then in the third quarter hit on a couple big ones, and this game was over. So very disappointing if you're a Jets fan. If you're a Ravens fan, it's a big turn the page after last year's frustrations, and you move on with the W in your back pocket you were expecting to get.
Are you concerned? I know that you said the defense came out playing well for the Jets. Are you concerned about the coaching overall, the offensive coaching, or is it just the Joe Flacco can't do it anymore?
Yeah, I think with Jets fans, we're just sick of it. It's just like, come on now. I don't want to hear any excuses. I think Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas and And you could say, yeah, sure, Joe Flacco was in there, so whatever. But at the same time, we've heard some not so great things about Zach Wilson's development behind the scenes, and he's coming off a bad rookie year. So the idea now, we're going to switch. You're going to ask Jets fans now to switch from, oh, let's get behind Joe Flacco. Maybe he'll keep the job, to, oh, man, if we could just get Zach Wilson back. We need to see some results.
Joe Flacco more than any people outside the Flacco family.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So when we're being told by Robert Saleh what a great player Joe Flacco still is, and then this is the performance by the offense, yeah, it's disappointing, and it was a sloppy performance overall by the Jets, who dropped touchdown passes, fumbled the ball, just didn't play well. And, on the Ravens side, just a great job by their defense, which obviously had a nice assignment in week 1, but they just took care of business, and they were able on offense to get by. We didn't have Ronnie Stanley in this game, the left tackle, but then Jawan James, who the poor guy just can't stay healthy, he goes out again and gets carded. So they finished the game with their third string left tackle, but they're still moving the ball and scoring points when they need to in this game. So they're just two franchises in different places. And if you're a Jets fan, it is not too soon to panic, because this is not supposed to be the way this game played out. My dad, Keith Hanzus, who was supposed to give us a dispatch today, he went to the Meadowlands with some family friends, did the whole tailgating, and went there and got rained on and watched a team no-show. And it's just like, enough. Let's go. Let's go. Let's start doing something and giving the fans something to at least root for, because, again, the calendar changes. Nothing seems to change for the Jets. Good job by you, Ravens. It sure is.
I think the Ravens, who are still short some key players. J.K. Dobbins was out. We know Gus Edwards is out. So Kenyon Drake was their leading rusher. And
well, if you want to call it that, he had 2.8 yards per carry.
They didn't have a running game, so that's a little bit of a concern. But I think they have to feel good. Granted, it's against the Jets, but they have their secondary back, and they're like a back-to-front type of defense. Make the other quarterback hold the ball so that the pressure can get there. And I went into this game, really thinking if there is a weakness on this entire team, it's their pass rush. They did get 11 quarterback hits. I know it's against Joe Flacco, throwing the ball 59 times. 59 times! Joe Flacco threw it 59 times. I know it was, that's because of the
script got messed up.
It's like the opener against Peyton Manning, like 2013.
He looked really old, and we know that Joe Flacco, even in the best of times, was never a mobile guy. But when you really have these statues behind an offensive line, it does remind you, especially in the modern game as fast as it is now, when you have a guy that can't make any yardage up, can't evade the pressure and turn negatives into positive plays and scramble and get yards, it just puts you in an even tougher box in terms of your offense. So very poor start. No excuses for Saleh or Douglas or anyone else. It's enough of this. Like, you need to figure out a way to be competitive in your building to start a season. You got 75,000 Jets fans who put up with BS for a decade straight, and that's how you started this season. They sat in the rain and waited for 3.5 hours for something to cheer for, and you gave them nothing. This is no longer acceptable. It has been acceptable for half a decade now. We're not going to take it. Jets fans are going to boo lustily, and heads will roll if this happens again. We shall see.
You're going to Cleveland next week.
We'll see how that goes. My guard's up about this season after a performance like that. Should we take a break?
I think for your sake, yes.
Oh, man. Unbelievable. Let's take a break and continue on. All right, we're back. Let's get to a great rivalry game. New Orleans and Atlanta. They hate each other. Let's see what happened in Georgia.
23 seconds left. Will Lutz. Kick is down. And the kick is good. Will Lutz puts the Saints on top with 19 seconds to play.
Mike Haas with the call. WWL. Lutz! They missed Lutz last year. Now they got him back. He had that core injury. He kicked a 51-yard field goal, 19 seconds to play after Jameis Winston led a pair of late touchdown drives. And the Saints steal a 27-26 victory away from the Falcons in Dennis Allen's coaching debut. Mark, the Saints struggled to get into a groove offensively, but they did just in time.
This game was insane. I think, with 12 minutes to go in the final quarter, the Saints were down 26-10. And I imagine myself coming on this show to talk with you about what I had witnessed, and it was all Falcons who put the heat on Jameis Winston early on.
You have to pivot.
I have to pivot, but I want to talk about them to start because that's another team that I think people just said bottom 3 material, no skill position players, all sorts of issues on defense. Dean Pease came out in their defensive coordinator, going after Winston, going after that line, and they were winning the battle. And then at some point in that fourth quarter, Jameis Winston turned magical. And, we know he can do this kind of thing, but he, over the course of these 2 touchdown drives, went 11 for 12 for 157 yards and hit a money 2-point conversion as well. I think that their receiving core, they got Will Lutz back, but Jarvis Landry at 114 yards and a couple big plays in this.
That's a big signing for very little.
For very little. Chris Olave got going. Michael Thomas, they were not connecting early on, and Jameis Winston had some throws that were a little bit behind Michael Thomas.
First time they ever played together in a real game.
They got hot towards the end, and you could just see the chemistry, and it kind of, for me, with New Orleans, because they're a weird team. They told us all offseason that Taysom Hill was going to be a tight end. We just should never have believed him. But he was taking direct snaps out of the backfield and making all sorts of big plays too. And so the Saints, not surprisingly, are a fun watch. But I was real concerned about them through 3+ quarters until they turn it around. And if you're the Falcons, number one, this Cordero Patterson thing, which a year ago I thought was just going to be maybe a 1-year kind of flash in the pan, 120 yards off 22 carries, had some big plays in this, and was taking it to the Saints defense as well. Marcus Mariota, he's not perfect, but I also think that the way that Arthur Smith uses these guys, like the Falcons were fun to watch. I did not expect that.
They gagged. This is the worst loss of week 1. It's not even close.
They totally gagged, and it is a bad loss, but I just think
Cincinnati had a pretty bad loss, too.
Expectations-wise, though, if we're going to look at them as a mid-range team, I mean, they can do some things. It is a disappointing loss because you cannot crumble that way. They had the Saints in week 1 at home.
The fact that it's the Saints. I mean,
right, it's the Saints.
I choked before the game. The fact that I didn't draft this game, it's my own fault. I've said it so many times on this show. You guys are sick of it. This is the best rivalry in the NFL because the fans hate each other, I think, more than any 2 fan bases hate each other, and the games always deliver. You might have that, number 8, Fox team on the call, but who cares? This was the best game of the day. Just for the insanity that you score 17 points in the last 11 minutes, and then you have the Saints players dunking on the Falcons like in their press conference, like waving Falcons flags. Like, it's a real rivalry, and to lose it at home in front of your stunned fans, it's
all right, Greg.
I'm just saying,
we know who you're rooting for.
It's as bad of a loss as you could have. And for Winston, I mean, you mentioned it. In those 3 drives, he had 1 incompletion and 213 yards in the fourth quarter.
He totally caught fire.
He was like peak Joe Montana for 1 quarter of his life. That's
and that
amazing.
will work. I mean, they're a very solid team. They have a good defense, and they have a nice running game. And these receivers now, if this is Landry, and Landry's got to stay healthy, of course. That's been an issue. Michael Thomas, of course, has to stay healthy. But you add those guys on the field, and if Olave is a guy that's going to continue to develop, yeah, and Kamara's
Thomas was literally foaming at the mouth at one point. Did you see that, Mark? I think it was maybe after the 2-point conversion.
That's a little concerning. I think he might need to get a rabies shot.
Right, I would
have needle to the belly.
He was just so fired up after scoring. He had 2 touchdowns, and he was just like
he bit a guy.
Like
was bit by something.
He was just trash talking on the sideline. I'm not sure to who, and then spit was all over his own face.
He's
it was
rabid.
amazing.
I think you've now laid out everything that could possibly be.
I was like, they missed that intensity though. Like one thing I remember from that run, and he was so young in it back in 2017 when they probably should have won the Super Bowl. He was like their team leader as a rookie and a second-year player. And so if he's healthy, I think he adds like a something special even beyond his production.
I'll ask you this, Mark. So I think it's great that Cordell Patterson has a chance to, put together another really productive season here. It certainly started out well. Mariota's numbers don't look terrible, not overwhelming. Drake London was involved in his first game, but how does Kyle Pitts only have 2 catches for 19 yards? I mean, that has to be, for this Mariota thing to work, he's got to have that chemistry with Pitts, who is supposed to be a guy that's putting up big numbers every week now as he enters year 2.
He struggled to get. I wonder if that's more of a Saints matchup thing because I want to give that more time. But this is
he's supposed to be matchup proof. I don't know. Maybe credit to Dennis Allen and company there.
They took him out. I mean, he had 7 targets and two catches. So it wasn't as if Mariota totally ignored him. Just it was not a productive day. I thought Drake London made a couple big plays in this too. I mean, I'm just saying, I get what you're saying, Greg, that it's the worst loss, but the expectations for the Falcons were like a bottom 5
I get
team.
it. I just mean if you're there and you're a fan or you're a player.
Yes, it would suck. But
the high that you were at with 12 minutes left to losing that game, it has to be a killer.
I thought it was promising that the pass rush that we thought didn't even exist in Atlanta.
All right, so. Who pulled that one out?
Wrestling Bros.
The Cincinnati Zoo? They get a lock out of that game?
They should have to give it back. This is
Give it back.
It's a good harbinger for them, though. If they can pull this out of it,
They did
who
call
knows?
a big Chris Olave game, too.
And he didn't have
They
one.
didn't have
3
it.
for
So,
41.
you know what?
How do you count
Let's
that?
not give it to him then.
He made a key catch.
Revoke the block.
Try next week.
Chris Olave did not have a big game.
I think he did help set up, that one of those
It's like Mark's elaborate sandwich props. You got to nail all of it to get credit.
You can't leave.
No.
This is not horseshoes. This is not hand grenades.
You hush up.
All right, let's move on to Houston. You smell an upset?
Sort of.
42-yard attempt for Blankenship to try to win the game for the Indianapolis Colts. Hawk is the holder. Snap is down. The kick is up. And it's no good. The Texans dodge the bullet. Blankenship misses.
That's the sound of that kick veering right. Ready? Down! Rodrigo Blankenship. Blanken yanked it.
Lego man.
Pushed it. Matt Ryan rallied Indianapolis in the fourth quarter to force overtime against the Texans in his Colts debut, but neither team could score in overtime. Both blanked in their 2 possessions in the extra period. Blankenship, yanked it. 2020 final. Houston, sometimes a tie is a loss. Sometimes a tie feels like a win. If you're the Texans and Lovie Smith, you're up 20-3 entering the fourth quarter. But how about, let's talk, Greggy, let's talk Houston punting the ball at midfield in overtime and playing for a tie. Because, I mean, if you want, listen, you hire Lovie Smith, you're going to get Lovie Smith things. And we like Lovie Smith, but I didn't like who plays for a tie in anything.
Really weird.
Lovie Smith plays for a tie.
What was the down and distance? It wasn't like 4th and 36.
No, it was 4th and 3 from the 49-yard line with 26 seconds left.
What are we doing?
Well,
4th and 3 from midfield?
Here was Lovie Smith's explanation for
Explain yourself, sir.
This
All
is
right,
announcers.
Mr. Whitebeard.
These are the announcers talking about it.
Okay,
actually.
let's hear it.
I mean, if you have nothing to lose, if you're Lovey here, now they're going to punt. I mean, this is playing for the tie. But nothing. A tie is better than a loss.
What also, beyond all of it,
But
like,
you know what else is better than a tie? A win.
What are you telling your locker room?
It means
What message are you sending to your
locker room? You know what
room?
it's saying? Hey, man, nobody thought we were going to win, and, we almost won, but we didn't lose, so we're actually cool with the tie. 4th and 12, 4th and 15. Okay, I get it. 4th and 3. You're 1 completion away from being in field goal range and scoring one of the biggest upsets of week 1. That would stick to my ribs as a fan of that team.
Yeah, and he basically said, like, a tie is better than a loss. He said, I thought a tie was better than a potential loss. And he said,
brother.
It's not like, he also said, and kind of throwing his own team under the bus, it's not like we were playing our best defense at the time. We were drained. I would have said in Lovey's defense, they weren't playing the best offense at the time. They did not look like a team that was equally good to the Colts. They were outgained by more than 200 yards. There were many lucky moments for the Texans in this game. They made Jerry Hughes made a great interception on a screen play, but that was a little fluky. Like Alec Pierce of the Colts dropped a wide open touchdown that they ended up getting no points off of the Colts in the first half. The Colts, Rodrigo Blankenship, not only missed that kick, but kicked 2 kickoffs out of bounds, I believe, in a row, or at least 2 out of 3 in the second half.
Come on now.
And you know what the Texans did with those kicks out of bounds?
Kickers.
Absolutely nothing. These were the Texans' offense at the end of the game, and I think this is what Lovey might have been thinking, and he just didn't want to say it. He's saying our defense might be tired. Here was Davis Mills in the second half. Punt, fumble, punt, punt. punt. And Davis Mills' numbers were fine, 23 of 37, 240 for 2. This was an ultimate you got to watch the game performance because in key moments, he was inaccurate. He made some bad decisions, and I know they just didn't all come back to haunt him, but he wasn't right, and especially down the stretch of that game, they were like hanging on for dear life, and I guess they sort of did.
I just added up all those second half drives you mentioned. They had 73 total yards in the second half.
Right.
I don't agree with the decision at all, but I mean, I can understand a defensive-minded Lovie Smith not really trusting this offense today.
He was foreseeing.
Dan, I'm not saying you got to go for it.
He was seeing a situation where the worst, a terrible game. And he knew what that loss felt like for a second because he was expecting Blankenship's kick to go in. They had blown the game, and Frank Reich did the Mike Vrabel thing. He kind of set up for a long Blankenship kick instead of keeping the pedal on the gas there in overtime.
Sounds like a real coaching exhibition there. I think, what you're explaining, and I'm going to watch this tomorrow, like what Lovie Smith can't say is what he feels in that situation. And he didn't coach his team last year. He's new. His feeling is my team's not good enough. So I'm going to take a tie as a win for us because we're lucky to even be in this position. But it's just weird when it's that close and it's 20-3 entering the fourth quarter. It's the gutless move of the week.
It's also
and maybe the season.
It's also like that little time left. Like there would be under 20 seconds to go for you to stop them from getting into field goal range. Let's have a little confidence. Before moving on quickly, though, I have to give Reich some credit and Jonathan Taylor even more. The Colts are the only team in the NFL who falls down 3 scores and catches up with the running game. They stayed very run heavy. In fact, I thought they kind of went away from the run a little too much in the third quarter. And as they were making that comeback, it was almost all running. They were down 3 scores. They took a field goal early in that process to make it 14 points. And I was like, oh, you're taking the field goal to make it 14. And they just kept handing the ball off to Jonathan Taylor, who had 31 carries for 161 yards. And it worked. Even down 3 scores, he was the key to the comeback.
Matt Ryan
he's the man.
Matt Ryan also threw 50 passes. Is Matt Ryan well protected behind this line? I kept reading that
the first
this is a big
half
problem
especially,
here.
he was under a lot of duress.
I don't like that for Matt Ryan.
I thought he played okay in this game. He was not bad. The first half, he was under a lot of pressure.
All right, let's head toward our nation's capital. Well, near it.
Close by.
Snap to Wentz on a 3rd and 8. Jacksonville brings 6. He throws a fade towards Dotson, who fights for it and makes a catch! Unbelievable catch by Dotson! Touchdown, Washington!
Holy cow, talk about the rookie. They say he has some of the best hands there are. London, we are seeing that in action today.
Bram Weinstein, Julie Donaldson, WBIG with the call. I'll tell you this. If you are a fantasy person, go to your waiver wire. Just make sure Jahan Dotson's not, accounted for. If he's not, get him on your roster because that guy's going to be an instant contributor.
Good nugget.
That was one of my nugs, one of my takeaways from a 28-22 win for the Commanders, who took command in Week 1, beat the Jaguars, and Carson Wentz, I'll tell you what, not a perfect game, not by any stretch. He threw interceptions on consecutive plays, and at that point, the Jaguars took the lead as a result of his mistakes, but he rebounded, and he had his first 4-touchdown game since a fateful day in his career, a fateful day in the history of the Philadelphia Eagles, the day he tore his ACL on his left knee while on that scramble in December of 2017. So does that mean like this is the Wentz that's here now, the guy that was going to win MVP that year before he blew out his knee? No, he still looks like Carson Wentz to me, the good and the bad, but it was a reminder of Wentz, who was a punching bag really for years now, but especially this summer, and it was kind of seen as a joke that Washington could even think it could work with him, that when Wentz is feeling it and he can get going and he can make plays and he can move an offense, and that's what he did, because this was a game, Mark, where the Jaguars looked like they were going to take command. Like they had taken the punches. They had said, thank you, Carson Wentz, for these gifts, and now we're going to have a huge win, and we're going to show that we're not the same old Jags. No. Wentz recovered, and so did Washington, and now they're 1-0.
As we all know, decided to really go ahead and start to take command.
Well, I mean, Wentz had his mistakes, and that's my thing with Wentz is he's going to be productive, but you're waiting for that killer scenario, that killer action that
he's not a perfect quarterback
at all. But Trevor Lawrence, who we all project to have a big season for the environment around him that's so much better at this point, he had a terrible interception at the end of this game.
He did. It was a I want to think what the down and distance was, but it wasn't a situation where he needed to make the throw. He did. He kind of threw it up for grabs and underthrew it, and that was essentially the end of the game. And this was a team that was last in turnover margin last year, minus 20. But they were able to force 3 turnovers in this game, 2 interceptions and a fumble recovery. The 2 picks set up 10 points. So they, Trayvon Walker had an interception on a screen pass attempt by Wentz. He had a sack as well. So that was a very good sign. But now we need Lawrence to clean it up a little bit. He was flagged twice for intentional grounding. He had the interception that Mark is alluding to. So they didn't show their ability, even with Doug Peterson there, to find a way to win a game. But they were right there.
They're just losing is such a habit for this team that there's all these players that have been around for a few years. I know there's new players. I mean, they've done more losing than any team in the NFL, and that's in the DNA. They're going to have to change it at some point soon. But they did get a lot of production out of Christian Kirk and Zay Jones. They're free agent pickups, and ETN had a decent game. Walker had a decent game.
ETN did have a decent game, but he also dropped a 4th and goal swing pass wide open. It was a little high, but he should have had it, and that was 7 points.
Right, and there was another one where he was open for a touchdown, and Lawrence missed him. So it's those little things that are actually big things. And if you're a Washington fan, I mean, this is sort of what you drew up on paper, especially a year ago. But now, Curtis Samuel had a game. He caught 8 passes. He scored a touchdown.
Samuel.
Jahan Dotson is in the mix, caught a couple touchdowns. McLaurin had 1 big play. Antonio Gibson is now the main dude again and puts up 132 yards. They have players around Wentz. It's just against better teams, are those interceptions going to hurt more? I mean, Graver came down, and I know Justin, you were watching this game, and it's he was I thought Wentz played pretty well, except for those 2 terrible interceptions. I just was thinking, how many times has that been said about Wentz in his career? That's sort of the experience.
I will say this. I read this somewhere after the game, and I thought it was interesting because it was, well, let me say what it is. So Carson Wentz goes to the sideline after throwing the second interception on consecutive plays, goes there, and he looks at Ron Rivera on the sideline, head coach, and Rivera says to him, "Hey, you're going to have to win this." Wentz responded, "I will," before walking away. It's dramatic. It's a nice lead. But you know what else it is? It's the opposite of Carson Wentz's Indianapolis experience, where Frank Reich had no confidence in him, especially as the season went along. And you could see, I'm thinking of that Saturday, December game
where they didn't let him
against
throw.
the Patriots. They're trying to hold on for dear life and wouldn't even let him make a throw. If Rivera is a little outside the box and gives Carson Wentz a chance, maybe he gets some mojo cooking and Washington surprises people. We'll see. 1 game in, it's a nice day for the Commanders, who took command.
We got the Carson Wentz experience, and we're going to get it again.
I mean, that's fair, but it's also a great example, saying "I will" and then doing it, of taking command.
Kind of, yeah. He's getting ready to, kind of, "I will."
He was alluding to this day.
It was all building to this moment. All right, let's wrap things up. Video show 1 in the books, gentlemen. How'd you think it went?
I thought it was beautiful. I was almost not aware it was a video show. I hope the people out there enjoyed it.
Oh, that just speaks to Drew Christensen and Justin Graver and the whole team back there, and Sean Kelly and
I thought it was a
Christy
passable
Stapleton and all the rest.
A passable effort.
I think it was a lot of energy. A lot of energy.
All right. We'll see you, video people, next week. Same time, same place. Until then, good night.